A disc-shaped craft lands in a farmer's field, leading to one of the strangest investigations in history. A strange egg sits on the ocean floor and still hasn't been identified. A missing continent, a mysterious black hole, and more. These are more strange discoveries that left scientists completely confused. So in January 1981, there was a farmer in southern France named Renato Nicolai. He made a pretty bold claim. He said he watched as this disc-shaped object came down, landed in his field for a moment, and then just took off again. Now, UFO reports aren't novel. People have made them before. Most cases like this never really go anywhere, but this one was different. France had an official government group at the time that actually investigated this kind of thing. They were called the GEPAN, basically a government aerospace research agency. What they found was a circular mark where the thing supposedly touched down. The soil inside that mark was packed way harder than everything around it, like something heavy had been pressing down on it. Then they tested the plants in that area. Chlorophyll levels were lower than they should be, so they weren't processing sunlight the way they normally would. The lab results seemed to show they'd been hit with some kind of intense heat or energy. None of their findings were consistent with a helicopter landing. There was also no burn marks, no chemical residue, none of the stuff you'd expect if someone had set something on fire nearby, for example. Now, they never officially came out and said this was definitely a UFO, but they didn't have a normal explanation either. The Mariana Trench is the deepest place on Earth. It's completely dark, the pressure down there would destroy most things, and almost nothing human has ever been anywhere near it. For a long time, people just assumed the deep ocean was basically untouched. Then in 2019, during a deep-sea dive using a submersible called the limiting factor, they found a plastic bag sitting on the bottom. Ended up being one of the deepest pieces of plastic pollution ever found, and it wasn't alone. The more they researched, the more they found. Synthetic fibers and plastic fragments spread all through the deep ocean, not just near coasts or close to the surface. Ocean currents, of course, carry debris out, and tiny particles just gradually shift down from the surface over time. They found microplastics inside the bodies of deep-sea animals too, which means it's not just sitting on the floor, it's entering the ecosystem. For a long time, we kind of felt like the deep sea was cut off, but it turns out it's not at all. Even the most extreme, remote place on the planet is affected by what's going on up here. In 2017, researchers at a museum in Kansas City were examining one of Van Gogh's paintings called Olive Trees. They're using magnification and imaging tools to go over the layers of paint, and buried in the surface, they found something really strange. A grasshopper. Not a painting of one, an actual insect stuck in the paint. Van Gogh painted the piece outside, so at first you think, well, okay, a bug landed in the wet paint while he was working. Makes sense. But then they looked closer. Entomologists examined the insect and worked out that it was already dead when it landed there. There were no signs it had moved or struggled after getting stuck, which, you'd expect to see if it had flown in while still alive, so it probably just fell in. Wind would have carried it, or it dropped from a nearby plant. Maybe Van Gogh put it in there on purpose for some reason. But whatever the case, it was already dead before it hit the canvas. Van Gogh actually wrote in letters about how painting outside was a constant battle with dust, bugs, and random debris landing in his work, but finding actual physical proof of that over 130 years later, it's kind of funny. Now this is kind of amazing. For a long time, if you looked at a map, you'd see Australia, New Zealand off to the side, not much else really, but over the past few decades, geologists kept running into things that didn't quite add up. In 2017, a group of scientists officially confirmed there's actually another continent in that region. They called it Zealandia. The reason nobody had caught it before is because about 94% of it is sitting underwater. The parts that break the surface are what we recognize as New Zealand and a few smaller islands nearby. What makes it a continent isn't just the size, though it is huge, about 2/3 the size of Australia, but the bigger thing is the type of crust that it's made of. It's thicker and less dense than regular ocean floor, which is one of the main ways geologists tell continental crust from oceanic crust. How it ended up mostly underwater is still something researchers are trying to work out. The general idea is that it slowly thinned and sank over millions of years, but the exact way that happened is still being debated. Scientists already knew water moves between the surface and inside of the Earth. That part wasn't new. What scientists didn't know was how much of it is actually happening. When oceanic plates slide under continents, a process called subduction, they drag material down with them. Water goes down too, but not like a river or a stream. It's locked inside minerals and rocks. Researchers found evidence of a mineral called ringwoodite deep in the mantle that can hold water, and when they started estimating how much might be down there, the numbers were massive, possibly in the ballpark of several entire oceans worth of water just sitting deep underground. And they tried to balance the math. How much water is going down versus how much is coming up through volcanoes, and more seems to be going in than coming out. So either there's a huge hidden reservoir somewhere deep in the planet that we've never been able to reach, or there are ways it's cycling back up that we haven't figured out yet. It's a pretty crazy find though, changes where we think most of the water on the planet is. We usually think, oceans, lakes, rivers, ice, but a huge chunk of it might actually be locked away inside rock. Speaking of water in weird places, how about a massive water reservoir in space? In 2011, astronomers using radio telescopes picked up something enormous surrounding a quasar. It's about 12 billion light years away, which means we're looking at it as it was when the universe was still pretty young. Just a few billion years old. What they found wrapped around this quasar was a massive cloud of water vapor. And the amount of water in it is genuinely hard to get your head around. At least 140 trillion times the total water in all of Earth's oceans combined. Now, that early in the universe's history, it's kind of odd to see water on that scale. Building up enough oxygen to make that much water takes time. It needs multiple generations of stars to form, burn through their fuel, explode, and scatter heavier elements out into space. That whole process takes a very long time, but this gargantuan cloud is, or was, already sitting there. Near the Salton Sea in California, there's a mud spring called Niland Geyser. For a long time, it's just sat there bubbling away. But around 2018, it started moving, slowly sliding across the ground, and it kept going. Over time, it picked up pace, eventually drifting several meters a year, cutting a path through whatever happened to be in front of it. People tried to stop it. Engineers put up barriers, they dropped big rocks in its path, tried to redirect it. Nothing worked. The mud just slipped underneath or pushed through the sides. At one point, it was heading straight for a major railway line and nearby roads. At that point, the call was basically just to move everything rather than try to stop the geyser. Nobody's totally sure what's causing this. Something underground, pressure building up, geothermal activity. That's the general thinking, but the specifics haven't really been figured out. There's no obvious event that set it off the way you'd see with, say, a landslide. Whatever's pushing it seems to be coming from deep down. In 2004, geologists working for a mining company called Rio Tinto pulled a new mineral out of the ground in Serbia. On its own, finding a new mineral isn't a huge deal. It happens, but when they ran the analysis on this one, something came up that nobody expected. The chemical formula was almost identical to the kryptonite described in Superman Returns from 2006. Same combination of elements: sodium, lithium, boron, and silicon. Only things it was missing were fluorine and obviously the green glow. In 2022, astronomers announced they might have found the first black hole ever spotted drifting through space on its own. Normally, black holes get detected because they are near something. They pull material off nearby stars, they affect how objects move, they leave traces. This one had none of that. There was no star next to it, no system around it, nothing to interact with. The way they spotted it was through something called gravitational microlensing. When a really massive object drifts in front of a distant star, it bends the light from that star and causes it to briefly look brighter. By watching how that brightness changes, scientists can get a rough idea of how massive the object doing the bending actually is. In this case, it seems to be several times the mass of the sun. In August 2023, NOAA was running an exploration dive off the coast of Alaska. They had a remotely operated vehicle going along the sea floor when it came across something odd. It was a small, smooth golden sphere sitting on the ocean floor. It had a tiny hole on one side. It looked almost like something manufactured, like a little metal object, but when they got a closer look, it was clearly organic. The whole thing was recorded live, and even the scientists watching had no idea what they were looking at. One of them made a comment about hoping nothing was going to crawl out of it when they picked it up. He used the ROV arm to carefully collect it and bring it to the surface. Turns out it is biological, but beyond that, you don't really know much. The best guess right now is that it might be some kind of egg casing from some unknown species. It's still being looked at. For now, researchers can tell you what it looks like, feels like, and what it's made of in a general sense, but not what it comes from. That's been the video for today. I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next one.